Rui'an Liang visited our cafe regularly with his rich friends, always causing trouble. They'd snap fingers at staff, complain about everything, leave messes on purpose. Last month, Rui'an accused another waiter of being rude and got him fired on the spot. The rest of us learned to just take his abuse quietly. But that Tuesday, I'd had enough. When he demanded I remake his coffee for the third time, I politely refused. His eyes flashed dangerously. 2 hours later, he returned alone, pointing at me with trembling fingers. That's him, he stole my watch. The imported Swiss watch he waved cost more than I'd earn in 5 years. My manager didn't even let me explain. Eugen, you're fired, get out. I stumbled outside, humiliated. Minutes later, a sleek black car pulled up. A man in a suit, not Mr. Liang himself, stepped out. Mr. Liang's orders, you're to come with me. Behind him, Rui'an smirked victoriously. Apparently, someone had been monitoring Rui'an's activities and reported this incident immediately. Mr. Liang hadn't come personally, but he'd sent his personal assistant. My life had just been turned upside down by a spoiled brat's revenge. Mansion loomed before me like something from a movie. Marble columns, fountain gardens, and windows that stretched forever. I felt completely out of place in my stained cafe uniform. Rui'an walked ahead, already mocking me under his breath. Enjoy your stay in hell, he whispered as we entered. The interior was even more intimidating. Crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost fortunes, floors so shiny I could see my reflection. Mr. Liang led me to a sitting room where he finally spoke. You'll stay here until the truth is revealed. I opened my mouth to protest, but he raised a hand. I don't believe my son's accusation, but I need time to prove it. You'll be compensated for your trouble. Rui'an's jaw dropped. Father, you can't be serious. Mr. Liang's expression didn't change. This is not up for discussion. A butler showed me to a guest room. As I walked away, I felt Rui'an's glare burning into my back. His fists were clenched, his face red with anger. I knew this wasn't over. My room was larger than my entire apartment. The bed had silk sheets and the bathroom had heated floors, but I couldn't enjoy any of it. I was a prisoner, even if it was a gilded cage. The next morning, I tried to navigate the maze-like mansion. Every hallway looked identical. I got lost 3 times before finding the kitchen. Rui'an appeared from nowhere, smirking. Lost already? Pathetic. At breakfast, I noticed ink staining my chair. He'd set a trap. Throughout the day, small things went wrong. My belongings were moved, food disappeared from my plate when I wasn't looking. Rui'an watched me constantly, waiting for me to crack, but I refused to give him the satisfaction. Mr. Liang observed from a distance, his expression unreadable. That evening, as I prepared for bed, I noticed something odd. A tiny red light blinked in the corner of my room. A security camera. Someone was watching everything. The question was who and why. Breakfast the next morning was torture. Rui'an sat across from me, making comments loud enough for the staff to hear. I wonder what else he's stolen. Should we count the silverware? The maids exchanged uncomfortable glances. I kept my expression neutral, cutting my food calmly. Mr. Liang sat at the head of the table, reading his newspaper, but I sensed he was listening to everything. Rui'an grew frustrated by my silence. He knocked over his juice, making it splash toward me. I moved my plate just in time. Oops, he said with fake innocence. How clumsy of me. I grabbed napkins and cleaned it up without a word. His eyes narrowed dangerously. After breakfast, as I walked to my room, Rui'an caught up to me. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You think staying here will help you survive? You have no idea what I'm capable of. His breath smelled like mint and malice. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away first. Finally, he stormed off, leaving me shaking slightly. This was psychological warfare, and I was losing ground. I woke to find my belongings scattered across the floor. Someone had been in my room. As I gathered everything, I noticed a small envelope tucked under my pillow, empty but clearly planted there. Rui'an was setting me up again. I took the envelope straight to Mr. Liang's study, but when I arrived, I overheard voices inside. Father, I just need more time to. Rui'an's voice was desperate. Enough, Mr. Liang's tone was ice. I know what you're doing. Silence. Then Rui'an's footsteps rushing toward the door. I barely stepped aside before he burst out, his face pale and eyes wide. He saw me holding the envelope and froze. For a moment, something flickered across his face, fear, maybe guilt. Then it was gone, replaced by cold hatred. He shoved past me without a word. I knocked on Mr. Liang's door. He called me in but didn't ask about the envelope. Instead, he studied me with those piercing eyes. How are you finding your accommodations? It was such a normal question that I almost laughed. Fine, sir. He nodded slowly, and I realized he'd been testing me. Something had shifted, though I couldn't identify what. Rui'an's behavior became increasingly erratic. He followed me around the mansion, appearing in hallways when I least expected it. His pranks grew more elaborate, hidden tripwires, items moved to make me look careless. But what bothered him most was his father's attention. During dinner, Mr. Liang asked me about my education, my family, my goals. Simple questions asked with genuine interest. Rui'an's fork scraped against his plate with each question. His knuckles turned white, gripping the utensils. Father, can we discuss the merger? He interrupted desperately. Mr. Liang glanced at him. Later. That single word seemed to break something in Rui'an. He excused himself abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. I saw his hands trembling as he left. Later that night, I heard shouting from Rui'an's wing of the mansion. I couldn't make out words, but the anguish in his voice was clear. The next morning, he cornered me in the library. His eyes were red-rimmed, his usual smugness replaced with something raw and dangerous. "I'll ruin you," he hissed, "before he can like you more than me, I swear it." I found Rui'an in the garden late one evening. He was sitting on a bench, his shoulders hunched, face buried in his hands. He didn't hear me approach. For the first time he looked young, just a scared kid, not a manipulative brat. "Go away," he said without looking up. His voice cracked slightly. I should have left, but something stopped me. This wasn't the arrogant boy who'd framed me. This was someone drowning in their own insecurity. "I'm not here to replace you," I said quietly. He laughed bitterly. "That's what they all say." His hands dropped. Revealing tears he quickly wiped away. "You don't understand, nothing I do is ever enough for him, but you show up and suddenly he actually notices someone." The vulnerability disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. His face hardened again, walls slamming back into place. "Stay away from me," he whispered, standing abruptly. "Stay away from my father or else." He walked away quickly, leaving me standing alone in the garden. From a window above, I saw Mr. Liang's silhouette watching everything, motionless in the darkness. Rui'an tried something new, sabotaging a delivery meant for his father's important business meeting. He rerouted it to the wrong address, hoping to cause chaos and somehow blame me. But I'd overheard the plan and quietly contacted the courier company, fixing the problem before Mr. Liang even knew something was wrong. The staff noticed. The head butler nodded at me approvingly. The maids smiled when I passed. Even the chef started making my favorite foods without me asking. That evening Mr. Liang called me to his study. "Thank you," he said simply, "for handling today's situation with discretion." I nodded, unsure how he knew. "The staff speaks highly of your character, that says more than any accusation." The way he looked at me made my heart race, not with fear but something else I couldn't name. As I left his study I nearly collided with Rui'an in the hallway. He'd been listening. His fists were clenched so tight his nails drew blood from his palms. The hatred in his eyes was mixed with something else now, desperation. He was losing control and he knew it. "You'll accompany me to the company gala next week," Mr. Liang announced at breakfast. I nearly choked on my coffee. "Sir, as my personal assistant I need someone I can trust." Rui'an's fork clattered against his plate. "Father, I always go with you. You'll attend as well, of course, but Eugen will assist with business matters." The rest of breakfast passed in tense silence. Afterward Rui'an followed me to my room. "Personal assistant," he spat. "He's never asked anyone to do that before." Not even, he stopped himself, but I understood, not even his own son. Over the next few days preparations consumed the mansion. I was fitted for an expensive suit that probably cost more than my old apartment. Mr. Liang's tailor fussed over every detail while Rui'an watched from the doorway, his expression unreadable. The night before the gala I found a note slipped under my door. "Enjoy your moment in the spotlight, it won't last." The handwriting was unmistakably Rui'an's. I crumpled it but couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was coming. He was planning something big and I was walking straight into it. The gala was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, men in tuxedos worth small fortunes. I stayed close to Mr. Liang, trying not to feel completely out of place. He introduced me to business partners with surprising respect. "This is Eugen, my trusted assistant." Each introduction made Rui'an's expression darker. He stood alone near the bar, watching us with barely concealed fury. Then came the speeches. Mr. Liang was called on stage to address the crowd. As he spoke about company values and integrity, Rui'an moved. He whispered to a waiter, pointing at me. Moments later, during applause, the waiter accidentally spilled an entire tray of red wine down my suit. The crowd gasped. I stood there mortified as everyone stared. Rui'an wore a satisfied smirk, but Mr. Liang descended from the stage immediately. He removed his own jacket and draped it over my shoulders, shielding me from view. "Come," he said quietly, guiding me toward a private hallway. His hand on my back was gentle but firm. Behind us I heard the crowd murmuring, and I saw Rui'an's face. His smirk had vanished, replaced with something that looked almost like regret. Mr. Liang led me to a quiet office away from the gala noise. He handed me a towel and fresh shirt from somewhere. "I apologize for my son's behavior," he said softly. I started to protest that I didn't know it was Rui'an, but his knowing look stopped me. "I'm not blind to what happens in my own home." As I changed, he turned away respectfully. The gesture was small but significant. When I finished, he was gazing out the window at the city lights. "You handle pressure well," he observed. "Better than most people twice your age." Something in his tone made me look up. Our eyes met and the moment stretched longer than it should have. The air felt charged somehow, heavy with something unspoken. The door burst open. Rui'an stood there, breathing hard like he'd been running. "What are you doing?" His voice was accusing, scared almost. Mr. Liang's expression went cold. "Learning the difference between maturity and age. Close the door behind you." Rui'an flinched as if he'd been slapped. But he stepped inside, his eyes darting between us like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't want the answer to. Back at the mansion, I discovered more planted evidence, receipts for expensive items in my drawer, photos of jewelry I'd never seen. Rui'an's work was getting sophisticated. He wasn't just pranking anymore, he was building a case against me. But then I found something else. A small notebook had fallen from Rui'an's bag left in the library. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity won. Inside were pages of notes, plans, schemes, timelines, but also something else. Journal entries. Father smiled at him today. He never smiles at me like that. Why isn't anything I do good enough? Maybe if I make him leave, things will go back to normal. The words were desperate, painful. This wasn't just a spoiled brat's malice. This was a kid terrified of losing his father's love. I heard footsteps and quickly placed the notebook where Rui'an could find it. Later, Mr. Liang appeared at my door. I know what he's been planting, he said without preamble. I've known from the beginning. I wasn't surprised. Those cameras weren't just for security. He was watching his son self-destruct, trying to figure out how to save him. I returned Rui'an's notebook personally. He was in his room, and when I knocked, he looked terrified that I'd read it. I only saw it fell. I lied gently. Something in his expression cracked. He sank onto his bed, suddenly looking much younger than 14. You don't understand, he whispered. Everything was fine before you came. Father and we were fine. Were you? I asked carefully. He looked up sharply, tears threatening to fall. He never had time for me. Always working, always busy. But at least I was the only one here. Now you're here and suddenly he pays attention, asks questions, cares about someone's day. His voice broke. I thought if you left maybe he'd finally see me. The confession hung in the air between us. This wasn't about the watch or getting me in trouble. It was about a lonely kid desperate for his father's attention. I'm not trying to replace you, I said. No one could. Liar, he spat, but there was no heat in it. He turned away, shoulders shaking. Just leave me alone. I did, closing the door softly. In the hallway, I found Mr. Liang standing there. He'd heard everything. The next few days were strange. Rui'an avoided me completely, which was almost worse than his harassment. He looked exhausted, like he wasn't sleeping. One night, I found him having a complete breakdown in the library. Books were scattered everywhere, and he was gasping for breath, tears streaming down his face. Panic attack. I'd seen my younger sister have them. Without thinking, I knelt beside him. Breathe with me, I said calmly. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. He tried to push me away, but I persisted. Slowly, his breathing evened out. He stared at me with wide, confused eyes. Why are you helping me? Because you need help. It was that simple. Something shifted in his expression, confusion, suspicion, but also something softer. Gratitude, maybe. We sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, he spoke quietly. You think you're better than me, don't you? No, I answered honestly. I think you're scared and hurt and don't know how to ask for what you need. He flinched like I'd struck him. From the doorway came a soft sound. Mr. Liang stood there watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Pride, satisfaction, something else. Rui'an tried one more prank, switching important documents in his father's study to make me look incompetent, but I'd learned to double-check everything. I caught the switch and fixed it before the morning meeting. The staff's respect for me grew. Even the stern head butler started asking my opinion on household matters. Rui'an noticed. His pranks became more desperate, more sloppy. It was like watching someone drown and not knowing how to help them. Mr. Liang pulled me aside after dinner. My son is struggling, he said quietly. Not because of you, but because of himself. He needs to learn that love isn't a competition. His hand briefly touched my shoulder, a gesture both comforting and somehow more than that. You're handling this better than I could have hoped. That night, I saw Rui'an through his open bedroom door. He was at his desk, frantically writing something. His face was red and his hands shook. He looked manic, desperate. Whatever he was planning next, it was going to be big. Mr. Liang saw it too. I found him standing in the same hallway later, staring at his son's door with an expression of deep concern. This has to end, he murmured, not realizing I was there. Rui'an's plan was audacious. He tried to sabotage his father's business deal by sending fake rejection emails from Mr. Liang's account. But the company's IT department caught the suspicious activity immediately. The confrontation happened in Mr. Liang's study. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I heard everything from the hallway. How could you? Mr. Liang's voice wasn't angry, it was devastated. You could have destroyed everything I've built, everything that will someday be yours. I don't want it. Rui'an screamed back. I want you, I want my father back. Silence, then sobbing. Nothing I do is ever enough. You're always disappointed, always working, and now he's here and suddenly you care about someone. You notice him, you never notice me. That's not true. It is. You love him more than me. Everyone loves him more than me. The pain in Rui'an's voice made my chest ache. I heard movement, then Mr. Liang's softer tone. I love you more than anything in this world. But love doesn't excuse destruction. I just wanted you to see me, Rui'an whispered. More silence. Then the sound of a door slamming, Rui'an's bedroom, locking from inside. Mr. Liang emerged looking decades older. He saw me and didn't seem surprised. He's locked himself in. Hours passed with no sound from Rui'an's room. The entire household was tense. Around midnight, I couldn't sleep. I found Rui'an in the downstairs lounge, curled up on the couch, finally passed out from emotional exhaustion. His face was still wet with tears. He looked so young, so vulnerable. Without thinking, I grabbed a blanket and carefully covered him. His face was peaceful in sleep, free of the anger and pain he always wore when awake. I was about to leave when his eyes fluttered open. For a moment we just looked at each other. Why? He whispered. Why are you being kind to me after everything I've done? Because you're hurting, I said simply, and hurt people hurt people. His eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know how to stop, I don't know how to be anything else. Maybe start by letting people help you. He looked away but didn't argue. I left him there with the blanket. As I climbed the stairs, I saw Mr. Liang standing in the upper hallway. He'd witnessed the entire exchange. Our eyes met and something passed between us, understanding, appreciation, something deeper that made my heart race. He nodded slowly, then disappeared into his room. The next morning felt different. Rui'an was quiet at breakfast but not hostile. He didn't look at me but he didn't glare either. Progress maybe. Afterward I overheard Mr. Liang in his study talking on the phone. Eugen has remarkable emotional intelligence. He handled that situation better than trained professionals. I shouldn't have felt proud but I did. I was about to walk away when I heard Rui'an's sharp intake of breath behind me. He'd been listening too. His face went pale then red. The old anger flashed in his eyes. Of course, he muttered bitterly. Of course he'd say that. Before I could explain, he was gone. That afternoon I found my room completely trashed, everything destroyed, clothes shredded, belongings broken. But it felt different this time, less calculated, more desperate. In the center of the destruction was a note: "You're taking everything from me." The trap he'd set for me had backfired. Instead of hurting me, it had revealed just how broken he was. Mr. Liang arrived moments after I did, surveying the damage with sad eyes. "He's getting worse," he said quietly. "This can't continue." The confrontation was inevitable. Mr. Liang called Rui'an to his study and this time Rui'an came out swinging. "You've replaced me," he shouted. "You like him better, admit it." "I have not replaced you," Mr. Liang said firmly. "You are my son, that will never change." "Then why do you look at him the way you never look at me?" The question hung heavy in the air. Mr. Liang was silent for a long moment. "I look at him with respect because he's earned it. I look at you with love because you're my child. They're different things, Rui'an, both are valuable." "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, but that doesn't excuse your behavior. I know what you've done, the false accusation, the pranks, the sabotage. All of it, and I've let it continue because I wanted you to realize on your own how destructive this path is." Rui'an's face crumpled. "You knew the whole time, and I've watched you hurt yourself more than anyone else." "I hate you," Rui'an whispered, but his voice broke. "I hate both of you." He stormed out, leaving Mr. Liang looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "He doesn't mean it," I said quietly. "I know, but it still hurts." 2 days of silence followed. Rui'an stayed in his room refusing meals. The staff was worried, even I felt concerned despite everything. On the third day, smoke alarms blared through the mansion, fire in the west wing near my room. I ran toward it but Rui'an got there first. He was pulling my belongings out, trying to save what he could, coughing from the smoke. "What are you doing?" I shouted, grabbing his arm. "Get out." "I started it," he choked out. "I was trying to, but then I realized I couldn't let." The fire department arrived quickly. The damage was minimal, just smoke and a burned curtain, but what mattered was Rui'an's face streaked with soot and tears. He tried to hurt me again, then immediately tried to undo it. Mr. Liang found us sitting outside, both covered in ash. He looked between us, then did something unexpected. He pulled Rui'an into a tight hug. "You scared me," he whispered. Rui'an sobbed into his father's shoulder like the child he really was. Later, Rui'an found me in my temporary room. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." For the first time, I believed him. Something changed after the fire. Rui'an was quieter, more thoughtful. He stopped setting traps and started watching me carefully instead, like he was trying to understand something. At dinner, he actually asked me a question. "How do you stay so calm when everything's falling apart?" "Practice," I answered honestly. "And knowing that reacting makes things worse." He nodded, slowly processing this. Mr. Liang watched us both with careful eyes. Later, he asked me to his study. The room felt smaller somehow, more intimate in the evening light. "You've been patient with him," he said, "more patient than he deserved. He's just a kid who's hurting, and you're barely more than a kid yourself, yet you've handled this with more maturity than most adults." The way he looked at me made something warm unfurl in my chest. We were standing close, closer than necessary. His hand lifted slightly like he might touch my face, then dropped. "Thank you, Eugen, for everything." The moment stretched, charged with something unspoken. Then footsteps in the hallway broke the spell. We stepped apart quickly, but I'd seen something in his eyes that I couldn't unsee, something that matched what I was starting to feel. From the doorway, Rui'an stood watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Rui'an requested to talk to me alone. We sat in the garden where I'd found him crying weeks ago. "I need to tell you something," he started, voice shaking. "About why I really did this." I waited quietly. "When Mom left, Father threw himself into work. I barely saw him, then I acted out, got in trouble, and suddenly he paid attention. Bad attention is better than none, right?" He laughed bitterly. "But it was never enough. Then you showed up and he actually saw someone, really saw them. And I realized he could see me too if I wasn't such a disaster." His voice broke. "I framed you because I was terrified, terrified that you'd take the father I barely have, terrified that I'm not enough for anyone to love." "You are enough," I said firmly. "You always were. Your father loves you. He's always loved you. But not the way he looks at you." The observation hung between us. I didn't know how to respond because it was true. Mr. Liang's attention toward me had shifted into something else, something neither of us had acknowledged. "That's different," I said finally. Rui'an nodded, wiping his eyes. "I know, and I think I'm okay with that now." The next revelation came unexpectedly. Rui'an was looking through old photo albums when he found it, a picture of his father with a woman I recognized immediately. My mother. Is this? Rui'an's face went pale. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. They were young, smiling, clearly close. Mr. Liang appeared in the doorway, saw what we were looking at, and sighed deeply. I wondered when this would surface. You knew my mother. My voice came out strangled. We worked together years ago. We were friends, good friends. When she got sick and you needed work, she reached out. I owed her that much. So this was all, what charity? I felt betrayed somehow. No, it was opportunity. She asked me to give you a chance. What you did with it was entirely your own. Rui'an looked between us, panicking. So he's been here because of Mom, not because. Your mother's request got him an interview, Mr. Liang interrupted firmly. But I hired him because he was qualified. Everything after that has been his own merit. But Rui'an wasn't listening. Old fears were resurfacing. History repeating, he muttered. Another person taking. No one is taking anything, Mr. Liang said firmly. Eugen has his own place here, you have yours, they're different and both are permanent. Days later, Rui'an did something shocking. At a family dinner with extended relatives, he stood up suddenly. I need to say something, he announced, voice shaking but determined. Everyone fell silent. I accused Eugen of theft. I lied. He never stole anything. I framed him because I was jealous and scared, and I'm sorry. The room erupted in whispers, but I barely heard them. Rui'an met my eyes across the table, and I nodded, accepting the apology. That night, Mr. Liang found me on the balcony. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights. I need to be honest with you, he said finally. These past weeks, you've impressed me not just with your patience or maturity but with who you are as a person. He turned to face me fully. I find myself thinking about you constantly, noticing things I shouldn't notice, feeling things I shouldn't feel. My heart hammered against my ribs. I feel it too, I whispered. His hand found mine in the darkness. This is complicated. You're young, you're living in my house, my son. I know, I interrupted. I know all the reasons why we shouldn't, but I don't want to leave. His smile was soft, almost relieved. Then don't. Weeks turned into months. The mansion became home, genuinely, truly home. Rui'an was still difficult sometimes, still threw tantrums and tested boundaries. But there was affection now too. He'd seek me out to talk, ask advice, even laugh at jokes. One morning I found him actually helping staff clean up a mess he'd made. Growth. Mr. Liang and I moved slowly, carefully. Nothing rushed, nothing inappropriate, just quiet moments, meaningful glances. Hands touching when no one was looking, building something real and lasting. At dinner one evening, Rui'an looked between us and rolled his eyes dramatically. You two are so obvious, everyone knows. Mr. Liang raised an eyebrow. Everyone, please, even the gardener knows. But he was smiling, not the cruel smirk from before, but something genuine. Later, as I prepared for bed in a room that now felt truly mine, I thought about everything that had changed. I'd been falsely accused, humiliated, trapped in a mansion with a spoiled brat who wanted to destroy me, and somehow, impossibly, I'd found family. Not the one I'd expected, but the one I needed. A soft knock on my door. Mr. Liang stood there, just checking in like he did each night now. Everything all right? Everything's perfect, I answered honestly. And for the first time in my life, it was.